I spent 43 years waking up at 5 in the morning. 43 years of putting on a suit and tie. 43 years of walking through the same office doors. 43 years of saying good morning to the same faces. 43 years of having a purpose. 43 years of having a reason to get out of bed. 43 years of knowing exactly what I was supposed to do when I opened my eyes. And then one day it all stopped. I remember the day I retired. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the party. I remember the cake. I remember the speeches. I remember my colleagues telling me how much they would miss me. I remember my boss shaking my hand and saying, "You've earned this. Enjoy your freedom." I remember smiling. I remember nodding. I remember pretending that I was excited. I remember pretending that I was happy. I remember pretending that this was what I wanted. But here's the truth. Here's the truth that nobody tells you. Here's the truth that nobody warned me about. The day I retired, I lost my identity. I lost my purpose. I lost my routine. And most of all, I lost my people. I lost the only connections I had. I lost the only relationships that mattered to me. I lost everything that gave my life meaning. I walked out of that office building for the last time. I walked to my car. I got in. I sat there for a long time. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there. I stared at the building. I stared at the window where my office used to be. I stared at the door I had walked through every single day for 43 years. I stared at the place that had been my home away from home. I stared at the place that had been my whole world. And I thought to myself, what now? I drove home. I walked into my house. It was quiet. Too quiet. The house was empty. There was no one there to greet me. No one to ask me how my day was. No one to share the moment with. I made myself a cup of coffee. I sat down in my favorite chair. I turned on the television. And I sat there. For hours. I sat there in silence. I sat there with nothing to do. I sat there with no one to talk to. I sat there with no one to see. I sat there with no one to call. And I realized something that terrified me. I realized that for 43 years, my entire social life had been my job. My coworkers were my friends. My meetings were my conversations. My lunch breaks were my social time. My office was my community. My work was my identity. My career was my purpose. And now all of it was gone. All of it had vanished in a single day. All of it had disappeared in the blink of an eye. The day I retired, I realized I had no one to talk to, no one to call, no one to see, no one who needed me, no one who wanted me, no one who even knew I existed, no one who would notice if I disappeared, no one who would miss me if I was gone. That was the beginning of the darkest period of my life. That was the beginning of a loneliness I never knew existed. That was the beginning of a journey I never expected to take. That was the beginning of a pain I couldn't have imagined. But I survived. And I found my way back. And I'm here to tell you how. I'm here to tell you that there is a way out. I'm here to tell you that there is a way back. I'm here to tell you that you can find connection again. I'm here to tell you that you are not alone. I'm here to tell you that your story is not over. This is my story. And I'm telling it because I know that somewhere out there, someone else is sitting in a quiet house, staring at a wall, wondering if anyone would even notice if they disappeared. I know that somewhere out there, someone else is scrolling through their phone, looking at 100 names, and realizing they can't call any of them. I know that somewhere out there, someone else is wondering if life will ever feel the same again. I know that somewhere out there, someone else is wondering if they will ever feel connected again. I know that somewhere out there, someone else is wondering if they will ever feel like they matter again. And I want you to know that you are not alone. I want you to know that there is a way out. I want you to know that there is a way back. I want you to know that you can find connection again. I want you to know that your story is not over. I want you to know that you matter. I want you to know that someone cares. I want you to know that someone needs you. I want you to know that someone is waiting for you. I want you to know that your best years are not behind you. They are ahead of you, waiting for you, ready for you. So let me take you back to the beginning, back to the day I retired, back to the day everything changed. because you can't understand the loneliness until you understand what was lost. And this is a story worth telling. I was a manager at a manufacturing company. I started there when I was 22 years old. I was just a kid. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to do the job. I didn't know how to lead people. I didn't know how to handle responsibility. I didn't know how to navigate the politics. I didn't know how to manage the expectations. I didn't know how to balance the demands. I was young. I was green. I was naive. I was scared. But I learned. I learned because I had to. I learned because I wanted to. I learned because I loved it. I loved the challenge. I loved the pressure. I loved the feeling of solving a difficult problem. I loved the feeling of leading a team to success. I loved the feeling of building something that mattered. I loved the feeling of being needed. I loved the feeling of being useful. I loved the feeling of being important. I worked my way up. I went from the mailroom to the sales floor to the management team. I put in the hours. I made the sacrifices. I missed birthdays. I missed anniversaries. I missed school plays. I missed soccer games. I missed parent-teacher conferences. I missed so many things. I missed so many moments. I missed so much of my children's lives. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself I was providing for my family. I told myself I was building something. I told myself I was doing what I was supposed to do. I told myself I was being a good father. I told myself I was being a good husband. I told myself I was being a good provider. And I was good at it. I was really good at it. I knew the business inside and out. I knew every process. I knew every product. I knew every client. I knew every employee. I knew their names. I knew their families. I knew their hopes. I knew their fears. I knew their struggles. I knew their dreams. I was their boss. But I was also their mentor. I was also their confidant. I was also their friend. I was also their counselor. I was also their sounding board. I was also their support system. I would walk through the factory floor and people would wave. They would smile. They would say, "Good morning, boss." They would ask me about my weekend. They would tell me about their kids. They would share their problems. They would share their dreams. They would ask me for advice. They would ask me for help. They would ask me for guidance. And I would listen. I would listen because I cared. I would listen because it was my job. I would listen because it was my life. I would listen because it was everything to me. And I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize that those conversations were the only conversations I was having. I didn't realize that those relationships were the only relationships I had. I didn't realize that those interactions were the only interactions I was getting. I didn't realize that those people were the only people I was connecting with. I didn't realize that when I walked out that door, I was walking away from everything that gave my life meaning. I didn't realize that when I walked out that door, I was walking away from my identity. I didn't realize that when I walked out that door, I was walking away from my purpose. I didn't realize that when I walked out that door, I was walking away from my people. My job wasn't just what I did. It was who I was. When someone asked me who I was, I said, "I'm a manager at the plant." When someone asked me what I did, I said, "I run a manufacturing operation." When someone asked me about myself, I talked about my work. That was all I had. That was all I knew. That was all I was. That was all I could offer. I remember one time, I was at a party with my wife. It was a neighborhood party. There were people there I had never met. People who didn't know me. People who didn't know my job. People who didn't know my title. People who didn't know my position. And they asked me what I did for fun. I didn't have an answer. I thought about it. I really thought about it. I searched my mind. I searched my soul. And I couldn't come up with anything. I had no hobbies. I had no interests. I had no passions outside of work. I had no identity outside of my job. I was a manager. That was it. That was everything. That was who I was. That was all I was. And the thing is, I didn't even realize it was a problem. I didn't realize I was losing myself in my work. I didn't realize I was sacrificing my relationships. I didn't realize I was sacrificing my family. I didn't realize I was sacrificing my health. I didn't realize I was sacrificing my happiness. I didn't realize I was building my whole life around something that could be taken away in a single day. I didn't realize I was building my whole identity on something that was temporary. I didn't realize I was building my whole purpose on something that was fragile. But it was taken away. And when it was, I had nothing left. I had no identity. I had no purpose. I had no routine. I had no people. I had no community. I had no connection. I had no reason to keep going. I had no reason to hope. I look back now and I think, how did I not see it? How did I not see that I had no friends outside of work? How did I not see that I had no one to talk to? How did I not see that I was building my entire identity on something that would eventually end? How did I not see that I was building my entire life on something that could be taken away in an instant? But I didn't see it. I was too busy. I was too focused. I was too committed. I was too proud. I was too stubborn. I was too determined. I was too driven. I was too caught up in the day-to-day. I was too caught up in the grind. I was too caught up in the hustle. And when it all ended, I was completely unprepared. I was completely lost. I was completely broken. I had coworkers, but I didn't have friends. I had colleagues, but I didn't have companions. I had people I talked to, but I didn't have people I talked with. I had relationships, but I didn't have connections. I never went out for drinks after work. I never went to the bar. I never went to the game. I never went to the movies. I never went to the restaurant. I never went to the concert. I always went home. I always went back to my quiet house. I always went back to my wife and my dinner and my television. And that was fine. That was comfortable. That was easy. That was safe. But when my wife passed away 2 years before I retired, that easy life disappeared. That comfortable life disappeared. That safe life disappeared. She was my connection. She was my friend. She was my confidant. She was the one I talked to. She was the one I laughed with. She was the one I shared my life with. She was the one I shared my dreams with. She was the one I shared my fears with. She was the one I shared my heart with. And when she was gone, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to go on. I didn't know how to keep going. I poured myself into my work. I poured myself into my job. I poured myself into my career. I told myself it was the right thing to do. I told myself I was being productive. I told myself I was healing. I told myself I was moving on. I told myself I was strong. I told myself I was resilient. But I was just hiding. I was hiding from the pain. I was hiding from the loneliness. I was hiding from the reality. I was hiding from the truth. The truth that I had no one left. The truth that I was completely alone. The truth that I had no one to talk to. And then I retired. And I had nowhere left to hide. The first week after I retired was the hardest. I woke up at 5 in the morning like I always did. I went to the closet to get my suit. And then I remembered. I remembered that I didn't need a suit. I didn't need to go anywhere. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have anyone to see. I didn't have anything to do. I didn't have any reason to dress up. I didn't have any reason to look nice. I didn't have any reason to care. I sat on the edge of my bed. I stared at the wall. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to start my day. I didn't know how to fill the hours. I didn't know how to be anything other than what I had been for 43 years. I didn't know how to be me without my job. I didn't know how to be me without my title. I didn't know how to be me without my purpose. I made coffee. I sat in my chair. I turned on the television. I watched the morning news. I watched the weather. I watched the traffic report. I watched the local news. I watched the national news. I watched the same stories over and over again. I didn't change the channel. I didn't move. I just sat there. For hours. For hours on end. For hours and hours. I tried to call someone. I scrolled through my contacts. I had 100 names in my phone. And I couldn't call any of them. They were all work contacts. They were all coworkers. They were all people I had only ever talked to about work. What was I supposed to say to them now? What was I supposed to talk about? I had nothing in common with them anymore. I wasn't their boss. I wasn't their mentor. I wasn't their colleague. I wasn't their superior. I was just a retired old man with nowhere to go and nothing to do. I was just a retired old man with no one to talk to and no one to see. I put the phone down. I didn't call anyone. I didn't know how. The days blurred together. I woke up. I made coffee. I sat in my chair. I watched television. I ate lunch. I sat in my chair. I watched more television. I ate dinner. I sat in my chair. I watched the evening news. I went to bed. And then I did it all over again. And again. And again. And again. I stopped showering. I stopped shaving. I stopped changing my clothes. I wore the same sweatpants for days. I wore the same t-shirt for weeks. I wore the same socks for months. I didn't care. I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about my appearance. I didn't care about my hygiene. I didn't care about my health. I didn't care about anything at all. I stopped eating. I stopped cooking. I would eat a piece of toast for breakfast and nothing else. I would eat a piece of cheese for lunch and nothing else. I would eat a piece of bread for dinner and nothing else. I would open the refrigerator and look inside and close it again. I didn't have the energy to make food. I didn't have the motivation to take care of myself. I didn't have the will to do anything at all. I stopped answering the phone. My children would call. I would see their names on the screen and I would let it ring. I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to worry them. I didn't want to burden them. I didn't want them to see me like this. I didn't want them to know how bad it was. I didn't want them to know how broken I was. I didn't want them to know how lost I was. I didn't want them to know how alone I was. I stopped going outside. I would look out the window and see the sunshine and I wouldn't move. I would see the neighbors walking their dogs and I would feel nothing. I would see the world going on without me and I wouldn't care. I would see people laughing and talking and living and I would feel nothing. I would see couples holding hands and families playing and children laughing and I would feel nothing. I was numb. I was empty. I was hollow. I was gone. I was disappearing. I was fading away. I was becoming a ghost in my own house. I was becoming a shadow in my own life. I was becoming invisible in my own world. And I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to change it. I didn't know how to save myself. I didn't know how to find my way back. I didn't know how to find the light again. I didn't know how to find the hope again. I didn't know how to find the connection again. There was a moment, a specific moment. One night I was sitting in my chair. It was late. It was dark. The television was off. I was just sitting there, in the dark, in the silence, just sitting, just breathing, just existing. And I realized that I hadn't spoken a word out loud in 3 days. 3 days. I hadn't said a single word to anyone. I hadn't talked to anyone. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't texted anyone. I hadn't emailed anyone. I hadn't spoken to anyone. I had been completely silent for 3 days. I opened my mouth. I tried to say something. Nothing came out. My voice was gone. I had forgotten how to speak. I had forgotten how to form words. I had forgotten how to make sound come out of my mouth. I had forgotten how to use my voice. I tried again. I said, "Hello." It was a whisper. It was a croak. It was the sound of a man who had been silent for too long. It was the sound of a man who had forgotten how to connect. It was the sound of a man who had forgotten how to be human. I got up. I walked to the mirror. I looked at myself. I barely recognized the man staring back at me. I had let myself go. I had given up. I had stopped caring. I was thin. I was pale. My eyes were empty. My beard was long and unkempt. My hair was greasy and matted. My clothes were dirty and stained. I looked like a homeless man. I looked like a ghost. I looked like someone who was already dead. I looked like someone who had given up on life. And I thought to myself, is this it? Is this how it ends? Is this how I spend the rest of my life? Sitting in a dark room, alone, silent, waiting to die, and something inside me screamed. Something inside me refused to accept it. Something inside me fought back. Something inside me said, "No, no, no, this is not how it ends. This is not how my story ends. This is not how I go out." I said out loud, "No, no, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm not going to let myself disappear. I'm not going to let the world forget about me. I'm not going to let myself forget about me. I'm not going to let this be my life. I'm not going to let this be my ending. That was the turning point. That was the moment I decided to fight. That was the moment I decided to save my own life. That was the moment I decided to find my way back. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I knew I needed help. I knew I needed someone to talk to. I knew I needed someone to guide me. I knew I needed someone to support me. So I made an appointment with a therapist. That was hard. That was really hard. That was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I was raised in a generation that didn't believe in therapy. I was raised to tough it out. I was raised to keep my feelings to myself. I was raised to be strong. I was raised to be a man. And men didn't go to therapy. Men didn't talk about their feelings. Men didn't ask for help. Men didn't admit they were struggling. Men didn't admit they were broken. Men didn't admit they were lost. But I was desperate. I was desperate enough to try anything. I was desperate enough to break every rule I had ever learned. I was desperate enough to admit I needed help. I was desperate enough to ask for support. I walked into that therapist's office. I sat down in the chair across from her. I looked at her. She looked at me. She had kind eyes. She had a gentle voice. She had a calm presence. She said, "What brings you here today?" And I started crying. I didn't want to cry. I didn't plan to cry. But I couldn't help it. The tears just came. They came from somewhere deep inside me. They came from all the years of holding it in. They came from all the years of pretending to be okay. They came from all the years of swallowing my feelings. They came from all the years of hiding my pain. They came from all the years of being strong. They came from all the years of being alone. I cried for 15 minutes. I just cried. I couldn't talk. I couldn't form words. I couldn't explain. I just sat there and sobbed. I sat there and let it all out. I sat there and let go of everything I had been holding in. And she waited. She didn't rush me. She didn't tell me to calm down. She didn't tell me to be strong. She didn't tell me to pull myself together. She didn't tell me to stop crying. She just waited. She handed me a box of tissues. She sat there in silence. She let me cry. She let me feel. She let me be. And when I was done, I said, "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm crying." And she said, "You don't have to be sorry. You don't have to explain. You don't have to be anything other than what you are right now. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm for." That was the first time I felt seen in years. That was the first time I felt heard in years. That was the first time I felt like someone actually cared about me. Not because I was useful. Not because I was productive. Not because I was their boss. Not because I was their mentor. Not because I had anything to offer. But just because I was a person. Just because I was hurting. Just because I needed help. Just because I was human. And that was the beginning of my healing. That was the beginning of my journey back. That was the beginning of my new life. My therapist gave me homework. She told me I had to leave the house every day. She said it didn't matter where I went. She said it didn't matter what I did. She said I just had to leave. I had to get out of the house. I had to see the world. I had to see other people. I had to remind myself that I was still part of something. I had to remind myself that I still existed. I had to remind myself that life was still going on. The first day, I walked to the end of the driveway. That was it. That was my victory. I walked to the end of the driveway and I turned around and I went back inside. It was small. It was tiny. It was almost nothing. But it was something. It was a start. The second day, I walked to the corner and back. I saw a neighbor. I waved. They waved back. It was a small interaction. It was a tiny connection. But it was something. It was proof that I could still interact with people. It was proof that I was still visible. The third day, I walked around the block. I saw children playing. I saw dogs barking. I saw people gardening. I saw life happening. I saw the world moving. And I felt a little less alone. Just a little. But a little was enough. The fourth day, I walked to the park and back. I sat on a bench for a few minutes. I watched people. I watched families. I watched couples. I watched children. I watched the world. And I reminded myself that I was still part of it. I was still here. I was still alive. I was still breathing. I was still existing. It was small. It was tiny. It was almost nothing. But it was something. It was progress. It was a step in the right direction. It was the beginning of a new life. I started going to the grocery store. I would walk up and down the aisles. I would look at the products. I would read the labels. I would compare prices. I would take my time. I would talk to the cashier. I would say, "How are you today?" And they would say, "Fine, thank you." And that was it. That was a conversation. That was a connection. That was proof that I could still talk to people. That was proof that I still existed. That was proof that I was still human. I started going to the library. I would sit in the reading room. I would read the newspaper. I would look at the magazines. I would watch people come and go. I would listen to the quiet hum of the library. I would feel the peace of the silence. And I would feel peaceful. Not happy. Not joyful. But peaceful. And peace was a start. I started going to the coffee shop. I would order a cup of coffee and sit at a table by the window. I would watch people walk by. I would watch families. I would watch couples. I would watch children. I would watch the world. And I would remind myself that the world was still turning. That life was still going on. That I could still be part of it. That I still had a place in it. I started talking to strangers. I would say hello to people on the street. I would compliment someone's dog. I would ask someone about their garden. I would make small talk with the barista. I would comment on the weather. I would ask for directions. I would ask for recommendations. Small, tiny, insignificant interactions. But they were something. They were proof that I could still connect with people. They were proof that I wasn't completely invisible. They were proof that I still mattered. My therapist encouraged me to find a community. She said that I needed to find people who shared my interests. She said that I needed to find people who understood me. She said that I needed to find people who would accept me for who I was. She said that I needed to find people who would see me. She said that I needed to find people who would hear me. She said that I needed to find people who would care about me. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know where to start. I had no hobbies. I had no interests. I had no passions outside of work. What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to join? What was I supposed to say? What was I supposed to offer? And then I remembered. I remembered that I used to love woodworking. I used to love building things. I used to love creating things with my hands. I used to love working with wood. I used to love the feel of the grain. I used to love the smell of sawdust. I used to love the satisfaction of making something from nothing. I used to have a workshop in my garage. I used to make furniture. I used to make toys for my children. I used to make things for the house. I used to make gifts for my wife. I used to make memories with my hands. But I had stopped. I had stopped because I was too busy. I had stopped because I had no time. I had stopped because I was too tired. I had stopped because I was too focused on work. I had stopped because I had forgotten how much I loved it. So I went to the garage. I uncovered my tools. I dusted off my workbench. I looked at the wood I had stored. I touched it. I felt it. I remembered. And I started building. I started building a birdhouse. Just a simple birdhouse. Nothing fancy. Nothing complicated. Just a little house for the birds. I worked on that birdhouse for days. I sanded the wood. I cut the pieces. I measured and I measured and I measured again. I glued them together. I clamped them. I let them dry. Painted it. I painted it a beautiful blue. I hung it in the backyard. And I watched the birds find it. I watched them move in. I watched them build their nests. I watched them raise their babies. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt proud. I felt useful. I felt like I had made something that mattered. I felt like I had created something that had purpose. I felt like I had built something that had meaning. I started going to a woodworking club. It was at the local community center. I walked in, not knowing what to expect. I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't want to be the new guy. I didn't want to be the old man who didn't know anything. I didn't want to be the outsider. I didn't want to be the stranger. I didn't want to be the one who didn't belong. But they welcomed me. They welcomed me like I was one of them. They showed me their projects. They shared their tips. They told me their stories. They asked me about mine. They listened to me. They cared about me. They included me. They accepted me. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had a place. I felt like I had a people. I felt like I had a community. I found my people. Not at work. Not at the office. Not in a meeting room. But in a woodworking club at a community center. And they became my new family. My new connection. My new reason to get out of bed in the morning. My new purpose. My new community. My new friends. Someone told me that the best way to overcome loneliness is to help other people who are lonely. I didn't believe it at first. It sounded like a cliché. It sounded like something you would read on a greeting card. It sounded too simple. It sounded too easy. It sounded too convenient. But I tried it anyway. I was desperate. I was willing to try anything. I was willing to do whatever it took. I started volunteering at a retirement home. I would visit the residents. I would talk to them. I would listen to their stories. I would hold their hands. I would read to them. I would play cards with them. I would just sit with them. I would be present with them. And I realized that many of them were just as lonely as I was. Many of them had no one to talk to. Many of them had no one to visit them. Many of them had been forgotten by the world. Many of them had been left behind by their families. Many of them had been abandoned by their friends. Many of them were completely and utterly alone. I would sit with them. I would listen to them. I would hear their stories. I would learn their histories. I would know their names. I would remember their faces. I would be their friend. I would be their companion. I would be their visitor. I would be their connection. I would be their hope. And I remembered what my therapist said. She said, "You have so much to offer. You have so much wisdom. You have so much experience. You have so much love. Don't keep it inside. Share it. Give it away. That's how you'll find your purpose again. That's how you'll find your connection again. That's how you'll find your joy again." And she was right. The more I gave, the more I received. The more I helped others, the more I felt my own loneliness lifting. I wasn't just a retired old man anymore. I was a friend. I was a companion. I was a listener. I was someone who mattered. I was someone who made a difference. I was someone who was needed. I started mentoring young people. I started working with at-risk youth at the community center. I would talk to them. I would listen to them. I would share my experiences. I would offer them guidance. I would tell them they could make it. I would tell them they mattered. I would tell them they were worthy. I would tell them they were enough. And I watched them change. I watched them grow. I watched them believe in themselves. And I realized that I wasn't just helping them. I was helping myself. I was finding purpose. I was finding meaning. I was finding connection. I also started reaching out to my family. I called my children. I answered their calls. I apologized for pushing them away. I apologized for disappearing. I apologized for being absent. I told them I was sorry. I told them I loved them. I told them I needed them. I told them I wanted them. I told them I was ready to be present. I told them I was ready to be part of their lives. And they welcomed me back. They welcomed me back with open arms. They told me they had been waiting for me. They told me they had been worried about me. They told me they had been praying for me. They told me they loved me. They told me they needed me too. They told me they wanted me back. They told me they were ready to forgive. They told me they were ready to reconnect. I started visiting them. I started spending time with my grandchildren. I would go to their soccer games. I would go to their school plays. I would read them bedtime stories. I would take them to the park. I would be present. I would be there, not just physically, but emotionally, not just in body, but in spirit. I would be there for them, and they would be there for me. I started having Sunday dinners again. All my children, all my grandchildren, all my family, we would gather around the table. We would laugh. We would talk. We would share stories. We would create new memories. We would catch up. We would reconnect. We would be together. And I would look around the table and I would think, this is why I survived. This is why I fought. This is what I was fighting for. I rebuilt my relationships. Not the same way they were before. Better. Stronger. More honest. More authentic. More present. More connected. I was no longer hiding. I was no longer pretending. I was no longer running. I was just me. And they loved me. They loved me for who I was. Not for what I did. Not for what I provided. Not for what I achieved. Not for my title. Not for my position. Just for who I was. Today, my life looks very different from what it did when I retired. I am no longer the same person. I am no longer defined by my job. I am no longer defined by my title. I am no longer defined by what I do. I am defined by who I am. I am defined by my relationships. I am defined by my connections. I am defined by the people I love and the people who love me. I am defined by the community I have built. I am defined by the purpose I have found. I am defined by the life I am living. I have a community. I have people I can call. I have people I can talk to. I have people who care about me. I have people who need me. I have a purpose. Not the same purpose as before. Not the same purpose as work. But a purpose. Purpose that matters. A purpose that makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. A purpose that gives me reason to keep going. A purpose that gives me meaning. I go to my woodworking club every week. I still build things. I still create things. I still make things with my hands. And I still feel that sense of pride when I finish a project. But more than that, I feel a sense of belonging. I feel a sense of community. I feel a sense of connection. I am not alone. I am never alone. I have people who see me. I have people who hear me. I have people who care about me. I volunteer at the retirement home. I visit my friends there. I listen to their stories. I hold their hands. I remind them that they matter. And in doing so, I remind myself that I matter too. I remind myself that I still have something to give. I remind myself that I still have something to offer. I remind myself that I am still needed. I remind myself that I am still useful. I remind myself that I am still loved. I spend time with my family. I am present. I am there. I am not just a grandfather. I am a part of their lives. I am a part of their memories. I am a part of their future. I am building a legacy, not of money, not of things, but of love, of connection, of presence, of being there, of showing up, of caring, of being part of something bigger than myself. And I am happy, not the same happiness as before, not the same joy as before, but a new happiness, a new joy, a happiness that comes from knowing that I survived, that I fought, that I found my way back, that I found connection again, that I found purpose again, that I found meaning again, that I found community again, that I found myself again. I learned something that I didn't know before. I learned that loneliness isn't a permanent condition. It's a state. It's a phase. It's something you can overcome. It's something you can fight. It's something you can beat. Takes work. Takes time. Takes courage. Takes vulnerability. Takes reaching out. Takes connection. But it is possible. It is possible to overcome loneliness. It is possible to find connection. It is possible to find purpose. It is possible to find joy. I learned that you don't have to be alone. You can find your people. You can find your community. You can find your purpose. You can find your connection. It's out there. It's waiting for you. You just have to take the first step. You just have to reach out. You just have to be brave. You just have to be willing. I learned that you are never too old to make a change. You are never too old to find new friends. You are never too old to learn something new. You are never too old to start over. You are never too old to find joy. You are never too old to find purpose. You are never too old to find connection. You are never too old to find meaning. You are never too old to find community. You are never too old to find hope. I learned that the world is full of people who are just as lonely as you are. And they are waiting for you. They are waiting for you to reach out. They are waiting for you to say hello. They are waiting for you to be their friend. They are waiting for you to be their connection. You just have to be brave enough to make the first move. You just have to be willing to open your heart. You just have to be willing to take the risk. I learned that connection is the key. Connection is everything. Connection is what makes life worth living. Connection is what gives us meaning. Connection is what makes us human. And connection is never out of reach. It's always there, always waiting, always ready. You just have to open your heart and let it in. You just have to be willing to try. You just have to be willing to believe. If you are watching this, and you are feeling lonely, I want you to hear something. I want you to hear it deep in your soul. You are not alone. You are never alone. Even when it feels like the whole world has forgotten you. Even when it feels like you are invisible. Even when it feels like you don't matter. Even when it feels like no one would notice if you disappeared. You are not alone. I know how hard it is. I know the weight of it. I know the darkness. I know the despair. I know the silence. I know the emptiness. I know the pain. I have been there. I have sat in that darkness. I have felt that despair. I have known that silence. I have felt that emptiness. I have known that pain. I have wondered if I would ever feel connected again. I have wondered if I would ever feel joy again. I have wondered if I would ever be whole again. I have wondered if I would ever feel like myself again. And I am here to tell you, connection does come back. Joy does come back. Purpose does come back. Takes time. Takes work. Takes courage. Takes vulnerability. But it comes back. And I want you to know that you have a choice. You can stay in the loneliness. You can stay in the isolation. You can stay in the despair. You can stay in the darkness. You can stay in the silence. You can stay in the pain. Or you can choose to fight. You can choose to reach out. You can choose to connect. You can choose to find your people. You can choose to find your purpose. You can choose to find your joy. You can choose to find your community. You can choose to find your meaning. You can choose to find your hope. It won't be easy. It won't be fast. It will be hard. It will be scary. It will be uncomfortable. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when you want to give up. There will be moments when you want to go back to the darkness. There will be moments when you want to hide again. But it will be worth it. Every single step. Every single conversation. Every single connection. Every single moment of joy. It will be worth it. So reach out to someone. Call a friend. Join a club. Volunteer. Go for a walk. Say hello to a stranger. Do something. Anything. Just don't give up. Don't stop fighting. Don't stop hoping. Because your story is not over. Your connection is still waiting. Your community is still waiting. Your purpose is still waiting. Your joy is still waiting. Your life is still waiting. The world needs you. The world needs your love. The world needs your light. The world needs your story. The world needs your presence. The world needs your connection. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You matter. You matter so much. And you have so much to offer. You have so much wisdom. You have so much experience. You have so much love. You have so much kindness. You have so much compassion. You have so much to give. Don't keep it inside. Share it. Give it away. That's how you'll find your purpose again. That's how you'll find your connection again. That's how you'll find your joy again. That's how you'll find your meaning again. That's how you'll find your way back. I am living proof that it's possible. I am living proof that you can overcome loneliness. I am living proof that you can find connection again. I am living proof that it's never too late to start over. I am living proof that your best years are not behind you. They are ahead of you, waiting for you, ready for you, just waiting for you to take that first step. So take that first step. Take that leap. Take that chance. Because you are worth it. You are so worth it. And your new life is waiting for you. Your new community is waiting for you. Your new purpose is waiting for you. Your new joy is waiting for you. Your new connection is waiting for you. All you have to do is reach out. All you have to do is say yes. All you have to do is believe. All you have to do is take that first step. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe. I share real, unfiltered, true life stories every week, and I would love to hear yours. Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt lonely? What did you do to overcome it? I read every single comment. I see you. I hear you. I feel your pain. I understand your struggle. And I am so proud of you for still being here, for still fighting, for still hoping, for still reaching out, for still trying, for still believing, for still being you. I'll see you in the next one.